David here with Figboot on pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have for you a pen from a French designer by the name of Jean-Pierre Lepine. It is something available at the retailer Papier Plume and is called the Winston. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of this pen, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to the good folks at Papier Plume for providing this pen on loan for review. These pens are manufactured in the Auxerre region of France, at least I hope that's how it's pronounced, which is near the Swiss border in Geneva, Switzerland. Lepine designs aren't typically subtle. He has a number of rather extreme pens out there. He has one out there made from parts from the Titanic, and many of his other pens push design and functionality to the extreme. It's worth checking out the Papier Plume website just to take a look at some of these designs. The pen I have for you is rather tame compared to those extreme examples, but it still has a great deal of artistic flair. The pen arrives in this interesting box. On the front, it has the company name as well as atelier, which means workshop in French. This pen is available in a number of different colors and materials, some of which are this one in red. There is a blue, a black with a unique resin treatment, one in a brownish amber called Duende, and even one made from juniper wood. The lid flips open, and inside we have a pen. This is the Jean-Pierre Lepine Winston, and this is the one in the resin called Duende. Duende is a word that describes the feeling of passion and inspiration. It has origins from flamenco dancing. The pen is named the Winston after the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill. It's shaped like a small cigar. Now, Winston Churchill famously enjoyed his cigars. His favorite brand was one called Romeo and Julieta, but that wasn't the only brand he smoked. He liked to mix things up a bit and favored many different brands and sizes. When he passed, he really didn't leave behind an enormous trove of cigars. He consumed much of what he purchased. This golden amber brown cotton-based resin is very interesting. There's a large amount of variation in this material. In each of these pictures here, it looks like a completely different kind of pen. But yet, when you see it as a whole, the contrasting elements really don't clash with one another, and they make for a cohesive colorway. I like how in some areas the material is a bit translucent. You can get a glimpse of what's going on inside the pen. The trim on the model I have is gold. It's also available with a palladium trim. I actually feel that the gold plays a little bit nicer with the brown and amber tones of this material. Let's take a look at the parts and features of this pen. On the top of the cap, there is a small golden finial. I find it a little odd because the piece is not inlaid or flush with the cap. It looks like kind of just like a button on top of the cap. This transitions into the clip. The clip is a bit on the long side, extending the majority of the cap. I find it to function well. It's not overly stiff and easily accommodates materials of varying sizes. The cap angles up at a fairly even angle until you reach a rather bulbous band. It kind of reminds me of a gold ring. It just protrudes a little bit more than a standard cap band. That's not a bad thing, but it's a distinct visual element of this pen. On the front, it is engraved with the signature of Jean-Pierre Lepine, and on the back, it says handmade in Saint-Lupin, Jura, France. The transition to the barrel is right at the end of the band and is unimposing. The barrel then tapers down at a fairly even rate of decline, and the end of the barrel is rounded. The cap twists off with just over 1.5 rotations, and underneath there is a number 6 stainless steel two-toned nib. The nib is available in fine, medium, or broad. It's just an interesting looking nib with the stylized flowers on top and the Jean-Pierre Lepine signature with Paris underneath. And here's a look at the plastic feed. The section begins with a band and proceeds to angle up a bit and then angles up even steeper. Behind the section, there are some metal threads and a step up to the remainder of the barrel. Now, I do find these metal threads to be rather sharp, but I don't find they really come into play because with the steepness of the section, it essentially forces your grip to the forward position, so your contact with the fairly sharp threads is minimal. This pen is not overly long and is fairly well balanced. The cap does post, and it does post securely. Even though the cap does have a fair amount of metal, it's mainly down here in the ring, which when using while posted for me rests against my hand. So I don't feel that it backweights the pen or throws off the balance. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges and a converter is provided. With the metal section housing here, eyedropping this pen would not be recommended. I have experienced a few instances of cross-threading with the thread, or with the cap. Like around 1 out of every 5 times I go to cap the pen, it just kind of catches off. That's not necessarily ideal, and I wish that number was 0. The Jean-Pierre Lepine Winston is available at Papier Plume for $245. I feel that's an appropriate price for this pen. I feel it's reasonable for what this pen brings to the table. It's a unique design with some very interesting resin from a brand that's a bit under the radar here in the US. If you're looking to round out your collection with something a little bit different, then this is worth checking out. I'll put a link to where you can find it on the Papier Plume site in the notes below. Thanks again. Go out to the good folks at Papier Plume for providing this pen on loan for review. Now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Jean-Pierre Lepine Winston. I do like this material. Like I said, there's just so many different aspects to it that, you could look here and that looks completely different than here. And you can look here and that looks completely different than here. It's just a myriad of looks in this one particular pen. And in regard to some size comparisons, here it is with a Pelikan M805. Here it is with a similarly sized Diplomat Arrow. And here it is with an Aurora 88 Black Mamba. In regard to a couple of other pens, here it is with a Montblanc 146 and a Sailor Pro Gear. And then finally, here it is with a Parker Duofold Centennial Big Red. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, here it is with the Montblanc 146 and the Pelikan M805, and then here it is with the Sailor Pro Gear. Here we go with the writing sample for the Jean-Pierre Lepine. And this is the Winston. And the ink that I'm using, which I thought was an appropriate color, is Papier Plume Doubloon. This is what the ink looks like. It's a shimmering kind of goldish yellow. And then this is what it looks like in regard to Diamine Gold Star. And then here it is with Ferris Wheel Press Sparkling Champagne. This is what the bottle looks like. This was part of Papier Plume's recent Mardi Gras set. You can see here that it has some golden shimmer to it. If you shake it up, then it blends in there. I can't really say that kind of yellowish and goldish inks are my favorite, but this one is nice, especially with the sheen to it, not the sheen, but the shimmer to it. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. I can't necessarily categorize this nib as overly smooth. It does have a little bit of drag to it. Kind of feels a little bit like an unsharpened pencil, but it's not sharp or it's not sharp at all. And in regard to some ink flow, I'd say it's on the lower side. That possibly has something to do with the shimmer that's in here. In regard to some reverse writing, it does a fair job with that. And then in regard to some fast writing, the feed keeps up just fine. So there we have the Jean-Pierre Lepine Winston. You can see I had mentioned the cross-threading issue. It just did that again while I put that in there. So I wish that was something that they could improve upon. But I do enjoy the overall looks of this pen. It's just an interesting look, especially with this kind of bulbous ring in the middle here. As I mentioned, if you're looking to fill out your collection with something a little bit different, then this is well worth checking out. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.